You clicked because you want to know what these people know that the rest of us don't. I stood on a cold street in Lillehammer, watching a row of baby prams parked outside a cafe. Empty, I thought. They weren't. Every single one had a sleeping infant inside, bundled in wool, napping in air cold enough to see my breath. The parents were inside, drinking coffee, completely calm. That was the moment I understood something. The Norwegians are not tougher than us. They are not richer by accident. They have simply built their entire daily life around a handful of quiet rules the rest of the world never learned. And once I saw the first one, I couldn't stop seeing the others. Here is what I'll tell you up front. The thing that makes life in Norway feel calmer, longer, and less anxious than life in most wealthy countries has almost nothing to do with oil money. It's a set of everyday habits, and one of them is written into Norwegian law from 1957. I spent months driving those roads, from Oslo up to Trondheim and out to the western fjords, and I kept a list, 14 things, small enough to copy, big enough to change how your years feel. Stay with me, because the last one comes from a specific piece of legislation most tourists never hear about, and it's the one you can start using this week without spending a single dollar. And no, you don't have to move to Norway to use it. That's the part almost nobody tells you. Let me start with those prams because it broke my brain first. In Norway, there's a word for it. They call it sleeping ute outside. Parents across Scandinavia let their babies nap outdoors in temperatures that would send an American grandmother into a panic. And I don't mean a mild autumn afternoon. I mean -5 degrees Celsius, which is around 23 degrees Fahrenheit. The belief, passed down for generations, is that cold, fresh air helps children sleep longer and get sick less often. I thought it was folklore. But when I read the research out of the Norwegian University of Science and Technology in Trondheim, the naps outdoors genuinely did run longer, often 2 to 3 hours instead of the shorter naps indoors. Here's what mattered to me. Standing there in my too thin coat. It wasn't about toughening anybody up. It was about trusting the outdoors instead of fearing it. That single reversal, treating cold air as medicine instead of a threat, sits underneath almost everything else I found. And it made me wonder what else these people believed that I'd been taught to be afraid of. Because the second secret answered a question I'd carried my whole life without knowing it. You know that feeling when the weather cancels your plans? The rain starts and the day is ruined, and you stay inside feeling cheated? Norwegians don't have that feeling. They have a saying instead, and you hear it everywhere, from grandmothers to school teachers. There is no bad weather, only bad clothing. In Norwegian, det finnes ikke dårlig vær, bare dårlige klær. Now, I used to roll my eyes at sayings like that. It sounded like something printed on a mug. But then I watched an entire kindergarten class in Bergen, and Bergen, mind you, gets rain around 240 days a year. One of the wettest cities in Europe. I watched those children file outside into a steady drizzle in full wool and rain gear and play for hours, not as punishment, as a normal Tuesday. The practical piece is simpler than you think, and it's the second secret you can steal. It isn't about willpower. It's about wool. Norwegians build their lives on a base layer of merino wool, worn right against the skin, because wool keeps you warm even when it's damp, and it doesn't hold the smell the way synthetics do. They layer it under everything. A proper Norwegian doesn't own one heavy coat. They own thin layers they add and remove all day. That's why they can be outside when you and I would give up. It's not their blood, it's their wardrobe. And once you fix the wardrobe, the whole world outside your door reopens. But clothing only matters if you actually go out. So the real question became, why do they go out so much in the first place? And that's where I found the word that unlocked the entire country. The word is friluftsliv. Say it slowly, friluftsliv. It translates roughly to open air living, and it was coined by the playwright Henrik Ibsen back in 1859 in a poem. But it isn't a poetry word anymore. It's a daily habit for millions of people. Friluftsliv means spending time outdoors, in nature, not to achieve anything, not to burn calories, not to post a photo, just to be there. A walk in the forest, coffee on a rock, 10 quiet minutes by the water before work. Here is the statistic that stopped me cold. According to Statistics Norway, the National Data Bureau they call SSB, a large majority of Norwegians report going on regular nature outings, and hiking and walking rank as the most common leisure activities in the entire country. Not shopping, not television, walking in nature. In a country wealthy enough to do anything money can buy, the favorite thing to do is free. And I felt something uncomfortable when I learned that because I realized how much of my own leisure had been things I paid for: malls, restaurants, screens, things designed to cost me. The Norwegians had quietly kept the one leisure activity that no company profits from, and they'd built their whole sense of well being around it. That was the first moment I understood that someone, somewhere, benefits from you believing that a good life has to be purchased. And that was the first moment I understood that someone, somewhere, benefits from you believing that a good life has to be purchased. And if you want to go deeper into exactly how that system works and how to dismantle it habit by habit, I want to tell you about something I put together. I've written a book, Map First, Deep Map, and Geo Edge are the titles depending on how far down the road you want to go. That takes everything I found on these journeys and lays it out as a practical guide you can use wherever you already live. No move required, no fortune needed. The details are in the description below if you want to take it with you. Hold on to that thought because it gets sharper. But first, let me show you what Friluftsliv looks like at lunchtime because it turned into secret number 4, and it's almost funny how small it is. Every workday across Norway, people eat the same humble thing. They call it matpakke. It means, literally, the food packet. It's an open-faced sandwich, usually just bread with a simple topping, wrapped in a special paper and carried to work or school, not bought, made at home. Every single day, I thought this was just about saving money at first. And it does save money. Norwegians eat out far less often than Americans, and their packed lunch tradition is a big reason why. But when I talked to people about it, the matpakke was about something deeper. It was about not making every meal an event, not turning lunch into a decision or an expense or a performance. You make your simple sandwich. You eat it, often outside if the weather allows. You don't think about it. The simplicity is the point. And in a life where we're constantly told to upgrade, optimize, and treat ourselves, there is something almost radical about a whole nation agreeing that lunch is just bread and it's fine. Now, the money part matters more than it sounds. And I'll come back to the true cost of all this later, because when I finally added up the numbers, the difference over a lifetime was staggering. But stay with the rhythm of their day, because the fifth secret is what they do when the workday actually ends. There's a beer they drink called uteppels. It literally means outdoor lager. And it marks a specific, almost sacred moment, the first beer you drink outside, in the sunshine, when the long dark winter finally breaks. But it's bigger than beer. Uteppels is the Norwegian instinct to catch sunlight the instant it appears. Because at those latitudes, up north, they go through months of deep darkness. Some towns, above the Arctic Circle, don't see the sun rise at all for weeks in winter. They call it the polar night, the mørketid, the dark time. So when the light returns, they don't waste it. They step outside, they tilt their faces up. They understand in their bones that sunlight is not guaranteed and must be gathered while it's there. And I started doing it myself on those roads. The moment the sun broke through the clouds over a fjord, I'd pull over and just stand in it. It changed my mood in a way I can't fully explain. We treat good weather as background. They treat it as an event to be honored. That difference alone, I think, protects them from a kind of sadness the rest of us just live with. But there's a flip side to all that darkness, and it produced maybe the most famous Norwegian secret of all, the one you may have heard of but almost certainly misunderstood. You've heard the word hygge from Denmark. Norway has its own version, and they'd argue it came first. The word is kos, and the adjective is koselig. It means cozy, but that translation is far too thin. Koselig is a feeling you deliberately create. Candles lit in the afternoon, a wool blanket, someone you like, warm light instead of harsh overhead light, a fire if you can manage one. Norwegians engineer coziness the way we engineer productivity on purpose, with intention, as a skill. And here's the number that shows how seriously they take it. Norway consistently ranks among the highest per person candle consumers in the world. Think about that. A wealthy, modern, high-tech nation, and one of the things they buy most per person is candles. Because when the darkness lasts for months, you don't fight it. You make it beautiful. You make the inside so warm and golden that the black outside stops feeling like an enemy. That reframing hit me hard because I'd spent years treating winter as something to survive, to grit my teeth through until spring. The Norwegians taught me it could be the coziest, most intimate season of the year if you build it that way on purpose. And notice what all of this has in common so far. Not one of these secrets requires wealth. Candles are cheap. Wool is a one-time purchase. Walking is free. So why do we, with all our money, feel so much more anxious? That question kept getting louder, and the next secret started to answer it. This one has a name that sounds strange to American ears. It's called janteloven, the law of Jante. It comes from a novel written in 1933 by a Danish-Norwegian author named Axel Sandemose, and it describes an unwritten social code across Scandinavia. The core idea is this: don't think you're better than anyone else. Don't boast. Don't flaunt your wealth. Don't believe you're more special than your neighbor. Now, I'll be honest with you. This one has a dark side, and Norwegians will tell you so themselves. Taken too far, it can crush ambition and punish anyone who stands out. But there's a hidden gift buried inside it that I didn't expect, and it's the seventh secret. In a society where showing off is quietly frowned upon, you don't feel the constant pressure to keep up. Nobody's parking a new luxury car in the driveway to make you feel small. The billionaire and the bus driver wear the same wool sweater and the same rain jacket. When status display gets turned down across a whole culture, a very specific kind of anxiety, the anxiety of never having enough, gets turned down with it. I felt the absence of it while I was there, and I couldn't place the feeling at first. It was quiet. It was the quiet of not being sold to, not being ranked, not being measured against my neighbor's things. And that's when the villain in this story started to come into focus. Because back home, an entire economy depends on the opposite. On you feeling behind, on you comparing, on you buying the upgrade. Norway had, almost by accident, built a culture that resists that machine. And the more I saw of it, the more I realized how much of my own life had been shaped by that machine without my consent. But a culture like that doesn't survive on attitude alone. It's held together by something they do together, and it became secret number 8, the one I think Americans have lost most completely. The word is dugnad. It means a day of voluntary, unpaid work that a community does together for the common good. Neighbors gathering to clean up the shared yard, parents fixing the school playground, everyone showing up, no one getting paid, food shared afterward. It's so central to Norwegian identity that in 2004, dugnad was voted Norway's national word. And during the pandemic, the Norwegian Prime Minister actually called the whole country's response a dugnad, a national volunteer effort, everyone pitching in for each other. Can you imagine a single word carrying that much weight that everyone instantly understands it means we take care of this together for free because it's ours? I watched a small dugnad happen in a village near the Sognefjord. People raking, painting a fence, an old man directing traffic he'd probably directed for 40 years, and afterward they ate together. Nobody was paid, nobody was keeping score. And I thought about how back home we outsource almost all of that now. We pay strangers for everything, and we know almost none of our neighbors' names. The Norwegians kept the older way, where community is something you physically build with your hands a few times a year. That's a form of wealth that never shows up in any income statistic. And speaking of statistics, I promised you the real numbers, and now I need to give them to you, because this is where the money truth lands hard. Now, I know what some of you are thinking right about now. This is lovely, Elena, but I'm 68 years old and I'm not about to sell my house and move to a fjord and start eating cold sandwiches in the rain. Good. I don't want you to. Because here's the thing, I discovered that almost nobody in the relocation business will ever tell you you don't need Norway to get most of this. Nearly every one of these 14 secrets is a habit, not a place. And I'm going to show you exactly how to plant them right where you already live, in the house you already own, this week. Start with the simplest test. Tomorrow morning, before anything else, put on a real coat and step outside for 10 minutes. Don't bring your phone, don't try to exercise. Just stand in the air the way those babies slept in it, the way those Bergen children played in it. That's friluftsliv and it doesn't require a fjord. It requires a door and the decision to walk through it. The Norwegians didn't invent nature, they just refused to stay inside from it. Your backyard, your street, the nearest park, the research on this is about the daily contact with outdoor air and green space, not the postcard scenery. Then steal the matpakke. For 1 week, make your own simple lunch and eat it outdoors, or at least by a window with the light on your face. Notice what you don't spend. Notice that the decision fatigue disappears when lunch is just decided. The average American household spends an enormous amount every year eating out, and Norwegians, despite living in one of the most expensive countries on earth, protect their money precisely by not turning every meal into a purchase. You can copy the discipline without copying the address and light the candles. Actually do it. Buy a pack of cheap candles and when the afternoon goes dark this winter, light them instead of flipping on the harsh overhead lights. Make one corner of your home cozy on purpose. This is the part people skip because it sounds too small to matter. It is not too small. It is exactly the size that works because you'll actually do it every single day for the rest of your life. That's the whole secret of the Norwegian model. The habits are small enough to survive. So that's the stay put version, and it costs almost nothing. But I still owed myself the hard math because I'd built my earlier life on the assumption that a good life had to be bought. So let me give you the number that reframed everything. Here's the paradox that runs through all of this. Norway is genuinely one of the most expensive countries in the world to live in. Groceries cost more, restaurants cost far more. A single beer at a bar can cost the equivalent of $12 or $13. By the raw cost of living numbers, it looks like a place that should make people miserable with financial stress. And yet Norway sits, year after year, near the very top of the United Nations World Happiness Report and consistently near the top of the UN Human Development Index, which measures health, education, and standard of living together. How can a place be that expensive and that content at the same time? That contradiction is the whole answer. Because the Norwegian secrets are specifically the ones that don't cost money. Walking, fresh air, simple lunches, homemade coziness, community work, sunlight. When your happiness is built on things that are free, the price of a restaurant meal stops being able to hurt you. They've quietly insulated their well-being from the very economy that keeps the rest of us anxious and spending. And I'll tell you honestly, figuring that out was worth more to me than any raise I ever got, because it meant the good life was never actually locked behind money. Someone had just convinced me it was. Which brings me to the next secret, number 10, and it's about time the resource you and I have the least of and guard the worst. In Norway, Sunday is still largely closed. Most shops are legally required to stay shut on Sundays under long-standing regulations, with only small convenience shops allowed to open. At first, as a visitor, this drove me crazy. I wanted to buy something and I couldn't. But then I watched what people did with a day when shopping simply wasn't an option. They went outside, they took the Sunday walk. It even has its own feeling, the Sondagstur, the Sunday trip. They visited family, they rested. An entire day of the week protected by law from commerce. Think about what that does over a lifetime. 52 days a year where the culture agrees together that you are not a consumer today. You are a person, you are a family member. You are someone who takes a walk. We gave that up quietly, decade by decade, until every day became a shopping day and rest became something you have to defend alone. The Norwegians kept the fence around it. And the 11th secret is what fills that protected time they call the closest bonds, familie, or venner, family and friends. But the mechanism I want to point to is a specific weekly one. Friday in Norway has a tradition called fredaskos, Friday coziness. It's the family night. Often it involves tacos. Norwegians developed a genuine, almost comical national obsession with Friday tacos, but the food isn't the point. The point is the ritual. The same night, every week, reserved for the people under your roof. Candles again, warmth again. A rhythm the whole country shares, so that Friday feels different from Thursday because you decided together that it would. And I want you to notice the pattern by now, because it's the real lesson underneath all 14. The Norwegians didn't get lucky with genetics or geography. They built rhythms. Daily rhythms, weekly rhythms, seasonal rhythms, the morning air, the Friday night, the Sunday walk, the candle at dusk, the first sun of spring. Life stops being a blur when it has a shape, and they gave theirs a shape on purpose. That was the years back regret that hit me hardest on those roads. Not the money I'd wasted, but the shapeless years I couldn't get back, the ones that blurred together because nothing marked them. Now let me give you the 12th secret, because it's the one that keeps them healthy long into the years that this audience cares about most. Norwegians stay physically active in an ordinary, undramatic way deep into old age. They're not all running marathons. They walk. They cross-country ski, which they'll tell you they practically invented. And there's an old saying that Norwegians are born with skis on their feet. Older Norwegians hike well into their 70s and 80s, not as an achievement, but as a habit that simply never stopped. And the payoff shows up in the data. Norway has one of the higher life expectancies in Europe, sitting above 83 years, according to their own national statistics. But here's what I want you to take from it, because it's not about skiing. It's that they never separated exercise from life and turned it into a chore you have to schedule and dread. The movement is woven into the ordinary day, walking to the shop, the Sunday trip, the outing in the woods. They don't go to the gym to atone for sitting all day, they just don't sit all day. And any of us, at any age, in any town, can walk. That's the most portable secret of them all. The 13th secret is one I almost missed, because it's so strange it doesn't look like a life philosophy at all. It's their television. Norway invented something the world now calls slow TV. In 2009, the national broadcaster aired a 7-hour train journey from Bergen to Oslo, filmed from the front of the train in real time with almost nothing happening. Just the tracks, the snow, the tunnels, the landscape. They expected a small audience. More than 1 million Norwegians watched. Then they broadcast a cruise up the coast that ran for more than 5 straight days, continuously. It became one of the most talked about programs in the country's history. Why does that matter to you and me? Because slow TV is a culture publicly admitting that it's fine to slow down, that not everything needs a cliffhanger and a fast cut and a jolt of adrenaline every 8 seconds. A whole nation sat down and watched the train roll gently through the mountains and felt calmer for it. In a world engineered to keep your heart rate up and your thumb scrolling, the Norwegians made rest itself into entertainment. And I think that tells you everything about the kind of nervous system they've protected and the kind ours has quietly lost. So that's 13. The air, the wool, the open air walking, the simple lunch, the outdoor beer, the candlelit coziness, the humility that kills envy, the community work day, the protected Sunday, the Friday ritual, the lifelong ordinary movement, and the slow calm, every one of them free, or nearly, every one of them portable. But I saved the 14th for last, because it's the deepest one, and it's the one written into law. I told you at the start there was a piece of legislation most tourists never hear about from 1957. Here it is. It's called the Friluftsloven, the Outdoor Recreation Act passed by the Norwegian Parliament on the 28th of June 1957, and it codified something the Norwegians had practiced for centuries under an older name, Allemannsretten, which translates to every man's right, the right to roam. Here is what that law actually says, and it stunned me when I read it. In Norway, you have the legal right to walk, hike, ski, and camp across almost any uncultivated land, even when someone else owns it. You can pick berries and mushrooms and wildflowers. You can pitch a tent for the night, as long as you stay a respectful distance from any house. The law specifies at least 150 meters, and you leave no trace. Private land, public right. The forests and mountains and shorelines of an entire country are, by law, open to every single person in it. Think about what that does to a person's sense of the world. You are never locked out. The land is not a wall of no trespassing signs. It belongs, in a real and legal sense, to you as much as to anyone. That is the foundation the entire Friluftsliv culture stands on. You can't build a nation of outdoor walkers if the outdoors is fenced off and private. The Norwegians made a collective decision in writing in 1957 that access to nature was a birthright, not a luxury for landowners. And here's the part that made me put my whole trip in a different light. That law didn't create the habit created the law. Ordinary Norwegians had walked and camped and foraged on that land for generations, treating access to nature as a basic human need, and in 1957 they simply wrote down what they already believed and protected it forever. Someone valued this enough to defend it in the statute books so that no future developer, no future fortune could ever fence the people out of the natural world. They preserved it deliberately. And now every child born in Norway inherits it automatically. You and I may not have that law, but we have the principle, and that's the real gift I carried home. The Norwegian right to roam is a formal, legal version of a decision each of us can still make privately, that the outdoors is ours to claim every day, that we will not wait for permission or good weather or a vacation to step into it. The land near you may be more fenced than theirs, but the sky isn't, the air isn't, the daily choice to go out into it isn't. And starting this week, you can live by Allemannsretten in spirit even where it doesn't exist in law. That's the one I wanted you to have most of all. So here's what I actually brought back from those roads, and it wasn't a souvenir. It was the quiet realization that the calmest, longest feeling, least anxious way to live was never hidden in some fortune I hadn't earned yet. It was in a candle, a wool sweater, an open door, and a Sunday with the shops closed. The whole time I thought I couldn't afford the good life, and the truth was that the best of it had no price tag at all, and someone had gone to a lot of trouble to keep me from noticing. If you've ever felt that quiet suspicion that the life you were sold isn't the life you actually wanted, then you already have the instinct these Norwegians live by. You're the kind of person who looks past the brochure. Don't let anyone talk you back to sleep. Now I want to hear from you. Of all 14, the babies sleeping in the cold, the closed Sundays, the Friday tacos, the right to roam written into law in 1957, which one hit you hardest? And which one will you actually try this week? Tell me in the comments below. I read them and I answer. And tell me where you're watching from, because I want to know which corner of the world is quietly hungry for a slower, truer way to live. If this is the kind of truth you want more of, the kind the tourism boards and the relocation agencies quietly leave out, then come with me down the next road. Subscribe and stand with the people who refuse to be sold a comfortable lie about where and how to live. Because next time, I'm going somewhere the postcards called paradise, and I found out why the people who actually live there tell a very different story about the cost. I'll see you on that road. I hope those secrets stay with you. This video was just the overview inside the Wandering Map Society. The Norwegian daily rules pick up right where we stopped. And you can ask me your questions directly, a real person, me answering you myself. You won't be alone. Fellow armchair travelers are already inside. Just point your phone's camera at the code on screen. Cancel anytime with one click. I'd love to have you with me.